As the Marvel vs. Capcom Fighting Collection Arcade Classics is upon us, just a matter of days digitally and a month or two physically, I'm just super stoked beyond my wildest dreams because I cannot believe that it took this long for this collection to be made, for all these games to be put together into one single package, not counting what Arcade 1-Up did, because that's just for a few people who can afford those big machines, so they have the space for them. But for everyone, it is an amazing time for sure. And from all the games in this collection, the one that has the biggest special place in my heart has always been Marvel vs. Capcom 2. And in this video today, I want to share with you how I feel about it, how this game has impacted me as a gamer over time, and still does, and why I do think it is one of the best, perhaps the best, fighting game of all time. So in the next couple of minutes, stay tuned. Alright, but before we get into the game, I want to share my history with this game. I grew up in the arcade era. I've been playing arcade since the late 80s, but throughout the 90s was a special time for me. Fighting games were my jam. Children of the Atom was introduced in 1994, 1995. I enjoyed that game so much, and everything that was subsequent to that, everything that came after it, all those games were fantastic. But the one that really stole my heart, it was always Marvel vs. Capcom 2. Back in 2000, I saw an imported cabinet from Japan. So after that, I moved permanently to the United States, found my wife, got married. All these things happened. I was no longer playing video games in the arcades or even video games at all for a good amount of years. But then in the mid 2000s, I came back to start playing video games again. I was playing at that time a little bit of PlayStation 2 and Xbox, and I was able to, I remember at a Walmart store, I saw a copy of Marvel vs. Capcom 2 from the Xbox, and I grabbed it. Then I grabbed the PlayStation 2 version through a friend of mine at work. I was telling him how much I love this game. He told me, well, I have a friend that is selling a copy. It's a neat copy. It's pristine, all of that, but he needs the money. He said, well, just tell your friend. And it was like a deal. The guy just came. We meet at the parking lot, kind of like buying drugs or something. At some point, I also was able to get a Dreamcast, and I got a copy of the Dreamcast too. Then, of course, the PlayStation 3 came on board. And I was an adopter of PS3 rather than the Xbox 360 originally. At the moment that this was announced as part of a digital option, I bought it there. Unfortunately, I didn't get it for the 360, which up to this day, I kick my butt for not doing so. I should have done it then. But I was playing on the PS3. I love that version as well. What really attracts me about Marvel vs. Capcom 2 is the sprites, is the art, is the concept, is the big roster. As a person who was in the arcades and play a lot of Capcom games, but also as a person who was a big fan of comic books since the 80s, having Spider-Man, having Hulk, having Captain America. And I will tell you, primarily I like to spend more time playing with the Marvel characters because I love them. It was the perfect combination, the perfect mixing of two of the most important universes in my world. I think what really makes Marvel vs. Capcom 2 the best is not just because it has the biggest roster in the collection, also because it introduced some characters just for the sake of the game. Of course, it has the 3D background, the 2D sprites, it makes it a 2.5, the first 2.5 game in this franchise. And of course, some people are not crazy about that, but to me, it makes it look even better, more modern, more stylized. It's something that you can see more on the later versions that were on the PS3 version, even on the Xbox 360 version. The PlayStation and the Xbox were technically ports of the Dreamcast. You have to unlock the characters, something that in the PS3 version 360 you didn't have to do. They were all unlocked from the get-go. I also at some point got the iOS version on my iPhone, which I was playing all the time. Unfortunately, it's not for the modern iOS. Now, on the technical aspect of the game, there were things that were changed in order to cater to the console market, which at that moment was growing really, really fast. It was simplified with only 4 buttons instead of the 6 classic layout in the arcades, which simplified a lot of things. You have the 2 punch attacks, weak and strong, and of course with the kicks the same. And you use the triggers and your controller for assist, but also to do the super attacks. So it was simpler. It made it more casual in some way, but that also allowed for people to feel involved in the game, that they were able to pull up some of those more aggressive attacks. And yes, some people will disagree or would say that that makes the game cheaper in comparison to the previous games, but in my mind it made it in a way more accessible, but also more enjoyable and a lot more fun to play with. Not only you have this big roster of characters from the Marvel and the Capcom universes from multiple games, you also are able to feel like you can control them, that you don't have to worry so much about how to master each character, because you know there's so many to master. It simplifies a lot of things in the way you can do your assists, the way you do certain things, and you pull out some combos. It's simpler, and at the same time that allows for the fun factor. At the end of the day, the most important aspect of fighting games, you know, some people are super competitive, they want everything to be more complicated. A lot of games, and unfortunately many games suffer from that. As they become more popular, or as they progress with different iterations in the franchise, they become more complicated. They're not as accessible for the newcomers. So Marvel vs. Capcom 2 really allowed for people to really experience the franchise for the first time. Perhaps they saw some of those games in the arcades, the previous games, and they found it very difficult or hard to master. Now you got the opportunity to really master some of those moves and really play in a way that is easier, that is friendlier, at the same time it's a lot of fun. That is the biggest thing for me about Marvel vs. Capcom 2, is how fun it is to play the game. And yes, it's very unbalanced when you come to think of it. Some characters are overpowered, OP, other characters don't have the same level, but if you are able to master characters and find things here and there, you're able to have a lot of fun. Yes, you know, some of these characters you can use, and you're always gonna see the eternal combos, people using Storm in combination with the Sentinel, things like that. You can see that nowadays, of course, we get to see a lot of these tournaments in video, we can see people streaming, and a lot of those things allows us to see how amazing this game can be, and at the same time really makes you feel like, man, it's hard to pull some of those combos. How do they manage to do it? Of course, it's a lot of practice. It's a game that is easy, accessible for anyone can have fun with it, but also you can master. You're one of those hardcore gamers, you can become really good at it, and there is a space in between for everyone to be part of. Now, going to the other side, going to the dark side, because it seems that up to this point, I've been just singing the praises of this game. When you look at it, there are a lot of things also that are flaws, and they're still there. And in some way, some of those flaws have been impactful and also had taken some of the merit of this particular game over the years for a lot of fans. One of them, of course, is the soundtrack. I will tell you, the soundtrack becomes so repetitive that it's so fun to listen to it. It's so classic at this point that I can hear anywhere and I know where it comes from. It is a classic. They're classic songs, but they're so repetitive. And this is the thing. Prior to it, some of the other games have better soundtrack, and they decided to go for a more jazzy style here. I have read and I've seen some conversations, some interviews, that budget went in to produce everything, the craziness of this game, that ultimately they decided to go for something more generic, and that is what it is. The music is generic and repetitive. On the 3D backgrounds, again, some people may not like the 3D backgrounds. I personally have no issue with it, but I feel that there was a lack of stages here. There's not enough stages. I would have loved to see more of what they have. Maybe they're returning some of the classic stages that we saw, because I would say some of the previous games had better stages, nicer looking, and here there's only a few and they're fine, but not necessarily are the greatest stages ever. Now, another complaint that I have, and a lot of people have, and that is more for the console versions, was the fact that there were not enough modes for this game. The practice mode was just very bare bones. Now, the final boss, it's beatable in comparison to others. I will tell you, some of the final bosses in the previous games were so hardcore to defeat. The lack of a story too, although there is a story, but it wasn't told really great in the game, that affects in some way. But at the end of the day, again, I think this game was more about bringing this big roster, this all-star cast all put together to just to get out and have fun with it with your friends. Now, continuing with the technical aspects of the game, of course, the imbalances are there. There are characters here that are super powerful, and if you know how to master them, you can technically rip everybody, you can destroy everybody easily. And unfortunately, that becomes the repetition. You see the same characters being used over and over. However, when you come to think of it, that has always been a problem with Capcom as a whole. You know, there's characters in the Capcom universe that have always been overpowered, and makes it hard for other characters to shine. However, if you give enough time and you start practicing, you can create some really combos. Some characters there are so cute, and the sprites are so cute, and they're amazing to have them. But to be honest with you, it's more about having fun rather than really trying to win. But some characters don't have the same stamina, the same level, the same energy. Even Wolverine, there's 2 different versions of Wolverine. So there's so much that sometimes it's hard to really master everything, or give a chance to some characters, because you're gonna, if you are trying to be competitive with others, you're gonna stick with the ones that you know the most, the ones that are easier to use, the ones that have the more powerful attacks, and those are the ones that most people are using. So that limits some others.
Come and get me. Who will survive? Engage.
All right, coming to the end of the video, I'm going to share with you my final thoughts. The reason why I consider this one of the best fighting games of all time, or perhaps the best fighting game of all time. Yes, there are many games out there, fighting games, that have been so influential. You can think about Street Fighter 2 Champion Edition. You can think about the Alpha Collection for some people. It's Street Fighter 3, of course. You can think about Guilty Gear. You can think about Tekken, Mortal Kombat, even though it has its moments and has been ups and downs. You can think about Killer Instinct, Virtua Fighter, so many great games. But Marvel vs. Capcom 2, for me, was at a moment the culmination of so many great parts, of so many great things about a franchise that I love so deeply because of my connection with the characters and the art. And at the end of the day, it was the craziness. It's like they decided to bring as much as they could and put it into one single package and created the all-star cast, which this game is. And even though it's not as balanced, and even though it lacks in some areas, where there is the soundtrack, where there's the stages, where there's the imbalances and the lack of modes, regardless of all of that, this is one of the funnest, if not the funnest, fighting game of all time. It is super fun. You can grab your controller, you can grab your 5-stick, duke it out with the computer and have fun with it. You know, it doesn't take long to come to the final boss and finish it. Anyone can finish it. It's so accessible. You don't have to be a master. You don't have to be an expert in fighting games. Everyone can have fun with this game. And that, at the end of the day, is what fighting games are all about. Not only there's a competitive nature of it, it's about bringing people together. It's about having fun. Yes, I love Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3, the original, also Infinite. I don't love it, I don't hate it, I have fun with it. I'm looking forward to another game in the franchise. Maybe they decide to bring another one at some point. Maybe this is the catalyst to it. In the whole franchise, all the games, you have to experience each one of them, but the most important one, the most impactful one, and again, the best of all, not because of a technical standpoint, but because of the fun factor, is Marvel vs. Capcom 2. Yes, we have the arcade one up. That was something that only a few people could afford, and it came out and they talk about they finally free it, but they did not free it. This is actually the moment that Marvel vs. Capcom 2, it's free. It's finally free. It's finally available for everyone, whether you play on Steam, whether it's in your Switch, whether it's in your PlayStation 4 or 5. Unfortunately, the Xbox didn't see it. Hopefully they change their mind and they bring it back, because I would love to play it on the Xbox as well. But regardless, it is now finally free. Also, we're gonna get the Classic Collection number 2 that has other classic games like Capcom vs. SNK 2. I'm looking forward to that. And there's so many things that I can say. I love this game and I love what they have done to bring it back. I'm so excited for it. I'm looking forward to it. I'm gonna get it digitally and I'm gonna get it physically in all the platforms available, because I love Marvel vs. Capcom as a whole, particularly Marvel vs. Capcom 2. But what is your opinion, my friends? What do you think about this? What is your experience with this franchise? Just share with me in the comments. Let me know how you got introduced to this. Was it in the arcades? Was it in the Dreamcast, on the Xbox, on the PlayStation 2, on the PS3, Xbox 360? Maybe you have never played it and you're looking forward to it. Again, let me know in the comments below. So once again, my friends, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, to comment, and to subscribe to the channel. Hit the notification button to remind you of the next video. Follow me on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. The links are in the description. And please consider supporting the channel financially through Patreon. My friends, God bless. Take care. I will talk to you again. Bye-bye.
Thanks for playing Marvel vs. Capcom 2. Your name will be inscribed in the pages of fighting history.